So the reason why I think these arguments about mind uploading and whole brain emulation nonsense is because the principles behind the coding of information are not clear. You can construct a lookup table, and you can say that this bit represents this entity, and you can construct the whole table. But that is artificial. That is something that is constructed from the outside. It's not something that is embedded in the dynamics of the system. Consider, for example, that you are making a simulation of the whole Earth's atmosphere. You can represent the temperatures, pressures at each point, and you can represent the sea level and also the distribution of temperatures, and you can put parameters that represent the sunbeam and so on, and wind and all these things. And you can probably construct a really large simulation system, and you can say probably that we have reconstructed the Earth's atmosphere numerically. You can say that, and it is certainly true that you can make probably useful predictions about the Earth's atmosphere. You can do that, and people are doing that. However, that's not to say that we have actually remade something that is equivalent to the actual Earth atmosphere, because there's only this mapping between these two entities. Right? On the other hand, you have the actual atmosphere of the Earth, and on the other hand, you have this numerical representation of that atmosphere, and you can actually make a mapping between these things, not necessarily one-to-one, but you can make some useful mapping. And some people falsely believe that if you can do this kind of mapping, then you have succeeded in reconstructing an entity, which is not correct. I mean, it's just a mapping, right? Mapping is very free, and it has such a high degree of freedom that people are sometimes illusioned. People have this illusion that if you can, establish a mapping, then you have reconstructed something, but that is not true. Take another example of, and this time we discuss human brain. And to begin with, it is not at all clear what are the relevant parameters that describe the human brain. Even if you have described all the neural activities in the brain, including when I say neural activities, I mean the action potentials. Even if you are successful in that, there are intracellular processes, involving millions of molecules, and there are these changes in the membrane, and so all these parameters are happening in the brain, but it's practically impossible to represent all of them in the simulation. So you make a choice, but there is no guarantee from first principles that these parameters are relevant. In addition to that, as I said, there's this coding issue. So you have a coding lookup table, and you say, oh, these bits represent action potentials, and these bits represent the cellular membrane, and so on. And these bits represent transmitters and all these things. So you can make these assumptions from the outside. But that is not to say that these simulations are actually equivalent to the actual human brain. The only thing you can say is that you can make a mapping in the mathematical sense, and this mapping thing is very convenient. It's such a free process, and there is the pitfall. Because we can make this mapping association very freely, we are, under the illusion sometimes that some of us are under the illusion sometimes that, the existence of mapping establishes something equivalent here. But that is not true. I mean, the only thing we can say is that there's this mapping, But mapping can lead to really absurd ideas. For example, you can probably, if you are clever enough, make a mapping between the human brain and the distribution of sand on the beach. I'm sure if you're clever enough, you can do that. But do you really believe that this distribution of sand and the dynamics would be equivalent to the human brain so that there will be consciousness here? This false assumption of creating something in existence through mathematical mapping has been, I think, responsible for many, many, irrelevant and, nonsensical ideas considering the human brain and artificial consciousness and so on. I personally think that these lines of thought have done a lot of disservice to human intelligence. No, I was supposed to push this. So, I don't believe that, if you assume that by simply making something that can be mapped from the human brain, you can construct artificial consciousness, I think that's a really false idea. And we should really think about the way information is coded within the human brain. And for me, qualia are the really crucial keys to the way that information is coded in the human brain. And because there's no lookup table. I mean, there's no external observer to make this mapping. And, qualia are here in the mind. And in some way or another, these are constructed by some natural law. So without any external observer. So I think that's why qualia are by far more important than these conventional information theoretic ideas based on concepts of mapping. Mappings have nothing to do with consciousness per se.